So far in the course, we have gone through some preliminaries that we require for this course. We went through the process of installing R. We also saw how to install RStudio. Then we had a discussion on packages and libraries, and we also discussed about data types, data structures, and vectors. Now we come to the core subject of this course, that is data frames. In this video, we will introduce data frames and we will see how we can create data frames in R. So, what are data frames? Data frames are a basic data structures in R like we discussed earlier. Now in this data structure, we have columns of data and each of the columns can be of different data types. So the data frame essentially has columns and rows. Each row of information is known as a observation. The observation can have various attributes, and all the attributes, like we discussed, can have different data types. Now data frames very closely resemble the way we store data in a database. So any data that can be persisted in a database or in a file which looks like a database can be represented by data frames in R programming. So we can import such data into the R into a data frame and then do further operations on the same. The first thing we need discussing is how to create a data frame. We start by creating an empty data frame. To create an empty data frame, we can use the function DataFrame in R language. Now when we use the function DataFrame, data.frame to be more precise, we can give the different columns what this data will contain. So like in this example, you can see that we are creating a column called name, which is of the type character, that is it will store a string in this field. Then we have a column called row number, row underscore number, which will also be of the character type, that is it will store a string. Then we have a column called company, which will also be a string. Then we have three numeric data fields, that is one is for storing the marks in computer architecture, one is for storing the marks in data analysis, and one is for storing the marks in R programming. Each of these three columns we have defined that they will contain an integer value. Now last we have a parameter which says string as factors. We will discuss this parameter later in the course, but for now it is sufficient to understand that when we say string as factors, the strings, that is the columns where we store the data in a character type, they will be considered as a factor. Factors are essentially unique values that can be stored in a particular column. Now, after creating the data frame using the data.frame function, we can store it in a variable, and in this case I have named my variable as v underscore marks. So the variable v underscore marks will contain the data frame, which is at the moment a empty data frame. After having created a data frame, we need to view the data frame. Now to view the data frame, we can just give the name of the variable which contains the data frame. In the last slide, we saw that we created a data frame and stored it in a variable called v underscore marks. Now to see this data frame, we can just type v underscore marks at the R prompt and it will show us the data frame that is contained in v underscore marks. Once we have a data frame, we can see the structure of the data frame. That is, the structure means what are the columns the data frame has, and also we can see how many rows of data does this data frame have. So to see that, we can use the function called str. So when we say str and within brackets we give the name of the data frame, it will show us the structure of the data frame. Now let's head to RStudio and see these commands in practice so that you get an idea regarding what really happens with the data frame in R. So here we are in RStudio. I have planted the same code that we saw in the slide regarding creating an empty data frame with a few columns in it. So this code is here. Now I can run this code. So I highlight it and I say run. So now this data frame has been created. Like we discussed, we can view the data frame by just giving the name of the variable which contains the data frame. So I do that now. So I say v underscore marks. So when I have done this, I can highlight it and I can run it. So you see that this is the data frame which contains these 6 columns that we defined. Now it contains 0 rows. So we did not create any rows. We created an empty data frame. We can see the structure of this data frame by using the str command. So I can say str underscore v underscore marks. So when I run this command, it should show me the structure of the data frame. And you can see that it does it. It shows that it's a data frame and it contains 0 observations and there are 6 variables, and the variables are name, roll number, company, then computer architecture, data analysis, and art programming. The last 3 columns, computer architecture, data analysis, and art programming, are integer variables, whereas name, roll number, and company are character variables. So you can see that we can see the structure of a data frame. Now, in general, when we want to see what is the type of a variable, we can use the function called class. So I can say class and I can give the name of the variable that I want to see. So here it is v underscore marks. So when I run this command, see what happens. So it tells me that it's a data frame. So I can be sure that now I have created a data frame. Now I created a data frame which contains 6 columns, but I did not have any rows because I created an empty data frame. If I want to create an absolutely empty data frame with no columns or no rows, I can do that as well. It is required in many circumstances because I may want to create an empty data frame and then dynamically add columns to it. And after having added columns dynamically, I may want to add rows to it dynamically. So how do we do that? So let's create another data frame called v underscore empty, and let me create this. So I can just say data dot frame and give empty parenthesis. So if I do this, it should create a empty data frame. Let's see this. So I run this command. So it has created it. Now let's see what is the contents of the variable v underscore empty. So I can say v underscore empty and let us see what it contains. So you see that it's a data frame with 0 columns and 0 rows. So let's see what it does when I say str of v underscore empty. So I run this command. You see that it just tells me that it's a data frame, but it contains 0 observations of 0 variables. So this is how you can create an empty data frame. It is used in many programming where we have to add columns and rows dynamically. Data frames in R were available from the very beginning of R programming. Now, what happened was that data.frame function was provided in R to create any data frames. However, we will see shortly in the course that it has got some limitations. Now, to overcome these limitations, a new data structure was launched which is called tibble. The tibble data structure is available since R 4.0. It does the same things as the data frame, but there are many enhancements to the way data frames can be handled. For example, it has given explicit functions for adding columns to a data frame or for adding rows to a data frame or for seeing a part of the data frame, etc. There are a lot of enhancements. Now we can use the tibble function to create a data frame, and instead of forming a data frame, the data structure is called a tibble. Now to create a data frame using tibble function, we need to use the library called tibble. So we need to include or load the library tibble by using the library command, and then we can use the tibble function to create a tibble or a data frame. The syntax is the same. However, notice that we don't have that parameter called string as factor. So I need to just give the column and the nature of the columns. So I give the same column names, name, roll number, company as character, and computer architecture, data analysis, and art programming as integers, and I can form a table. I can store the table in a variable. It is called v underscore table underscore marks, and we will see shortly in RStudio that the type of variable it creates is a table and not really a data frame. So now let's head to RStudio to see this in action. So here we are in RStudio. I have again planted the code that we just discussed. So now let's run this code. So first I load the library table. So I can do that by highlighting this library command and say run. Now you see that the library table has been loaded. Next I create the table by running this piece of code. So I say this, and now the table has been created. Now let us see what this table looks like. So I can just say v underscore table underscore marks. So let's run this. So you see that it's a table of 0 into 6, that is 0 rows and 6 columns. So you can see that it says it's got 6 variables, and the variable names are name, roll number, which company, which are character type. It tells me that. And then there is computer architecture, data analysis, and art programming, which is of integer type. So it shows me the whole details. I can also see the structure by just like I did for a data frame. So I can say v underscore table marks structure str. So when I run this, it tells me that it's a table and it shows me the structure just like it showed me for a data frame. So you can confirm that it's a table by using the class command. So I can say class v underscore table marks. I'm sorry. So here, now let's run this. So it tells that it's a TBLDF, that is table data frame. That's what table is all about. So you see that it is nothing but another form of a data frame, because it tells you that it's a data frame. So this is how we can create tables. So far, we created a data frame which was an empty data frame, either as a data frame or as a table. However, now let's try to create a data frame which contains some data. One way to do it is to create data frames from vectors. The vectors can contain the data, and that data can form a part of the data frame once we create data frame from the vectors. So let's see how to do that. So what we can do is that first we can create the vectors. So here I've created 6 vectors. So the first vector is called v underscore names, and you can see that I have created 6 elements in this vector. Similarly, I have created a vector called v underscore roll number, and there are 6 elements in that as well. Then there are 4 more vectors: v underscore company, v underscore marks underscore ca, v underscore marks underscore da, v underscore marks underscore rp, and each of these vectors have got 6 elements in it. So now once we have these vectors, we can create data frame using the data.frame command, and I can say that the column name is equal to the vector name. So I can say name is equal to v underscore names. So the contents of these vectors should form the part of the columns. So all the elements of the vector v underscore names should be the elements of the column name in the data frame. So now let's see this in action in RStudio to understand this better. So here we are in RStudio. I have planted the code we just discussed. So now here we have the 6 vectors. So let's run these vectors and create these vectors. So I highlight this code and say run. So now my 6 vectors are created. I can see them. So if I just highlight the name of the vector and say run, you see that it's a vector which contains 6 elements, just like I have defined. I could just try for another one, and you see that it's also a vector which contains 6 elements. Just let's see a numeric one. So this one, and if you see that it's also created a vector which contains 6 elements. Now let's create the data frame using these vectors. So here is the code we just discussed. So I highlight this and I say run. So there you see the data frame has got created. We can have a look at this data frame. I can say v underscore marks and I run this. So you see that now it's a data frame. You can see clearly that there are columns, and each column has got elements that we created from the vector, and there are rows of information. So this is the first row of information. In our terms, it's called observation. So this is the first observation, then this is the second observation, and like that we have created 6 observations. So each observation contains 6 elements of data, that is the name, roll number, company, computer architecture, data analysis, and R programming. So this is how we could create the data frame. Now let's see the structure if we see something different. So if you say structure of v underscore marks, let's run this and see what we get. So now you see that it's a data frame which contains 6 observations in 6 variables, and the column names are provided here, and each of the column names, it provides initial values what it can find in the data frame. So you can see that it displays all that. So this is how we can create a data frame from a set of vectors, and each vector containing the individual columns data. We can do the same thing as using the table function. So I can create a table as well from the vectors that we created. So here we have the same code, only notice that I don't have that last parameter string as factors when I'm creating a table. Now before we create a table, just notice that these are all the string variables which we had. They are stored as a string and they have not been stored as factors. We will see that later, how to create factors and when to create factors. We will discuss it later. So now let's create the table. So I highlight this part of the code and say run. So now my table has got created. I could see my table. I can just give the name of the table and say show me the table. So you see that it shows the same information. There's slight difference in the way it shows it. It shows the data types under each column name, and then it shows the data under each column name. Data is identical, and the way we can treat this data is also identical. However, like I told you, there are different functions which table provides which are not available in the data frame function. We have come to the end of this video. So let's summarize what we just discussed. So we discussed what are data frames. Then we discussed how to create an empty data frame using the data.frame function. Then we discussed how to see the structure of a data frame. We also discussed what are tables and how to create a table using the table function in the table library. Then we discussed how to create a data frame from a set of vectors, and we also discussed how to create a table from a set of vectors. So see you in the next lecture. Goodbye.